I still am.
I know, I'm
Jeez,
sorry.
Ag, land density. Huh? Yeah. So it could be.
And what do we owe this,
This honor,
color?
this color,
Yeah,
this color is a weekend in Florida.
okay, nice. Congratulations.
And being Mexican too, that helps.
Oh,
Because my wife came back red.
okay,
I came back dark.
welcome, it's good to have you here.
Thank you, it's good to be here.
How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good, how are you up here?
Tired.
Nice. Yeah, me too, I know.
Bring in the heat,
Yeah,
slow down.
Well, I got to clean a vacation rental on Mother's Day. And then I get to turn my server off.
Did you see Forrest's email?
Huh?
Yeah,
Forrest's email, I'm assuming that,
well, he forgot to mention the letter that the city that states that all that.
oh, really? Okay, good, I forgot.
Which came up when I left.
Yeah, 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 that's a good point.
I did. I haven't been home today.
There's some.
We just want to clarify that that's always taken care of. If it's not, I'm assuming we could do it. Okay, that's right.
Because it's going to well.
And,
And then there's one that now into that.
What do you do to your finger?
I always bring my knuckle. And I'm squeegee in the shower and I get marble.
History.
I thought it was marble floor when I squeegee down the wall. And broke it again. So I figured he's not gonna be straight now.
Taylor can be here, right?
She's in bed.
Okay.
She had to go turn on the server.
Oh, okay. Oh, they're dropping like flies around this. First you, now Taylor just sent her. She's resigning.
Oh, she is?
Yeah. As of the end of the month.
Of course, I can build their house.
Oh my God.
I'm next, by the way.
What?
No, you're-
Why?
people keep
What?
dropping
Is that what
applications,
you
man.
I know. You don't get
Oh,
to
no.
judge me. You're doing the same thing.
You got a lot
Oh,
more.
you can't do that.
Hey, it's getting, it's an epidemic, man.
I do a lot.
I need to stay, I do. Oh, do you? Okay. Well, one of y'all is gonna have to be chair after me here, so.
Yeah, whatever, I mean, my term's up in January, February, there's 2 acts.
And I got with the mayor this year that I'll be able to serve.
Okay.
There will be 2 years.
I mean,
Good, Tiffany, what? Ready to kick my ass to strangle you.
Yeah.
But we got that cleared up.
My son lives in Salt Lake.
So I.
And so I got told my other guys, when I come back, I take the truck to my house. We're gonna load it in the morning, so you're gonna catch up to this. I go, so,
That's a weird one.
Okay, that'll get me out of the hook.
I don't see, she wanted flyers or something, so I wanted to have animals on her property.
Hey, we
Yeah.
saw you how he made it.
And it's,
Go to the floor. You saw it, you were doing it.
Oh, once
he's
there.
trying, he's trying to.
I don't see it. We'll see
That's the
what
most
it's like.
consistent thing to us is life.
Yeah, exactly.
The three of us.
Yeah, I know, finally we're going the right way.
Huh? I never understood. We needed you, we needed you.
Part of the car.
They didn't tell us. They just said he was wrong, and I thought that was a decision. Oh, well, I didn't know.
All right, you about ready? Everybody ready? You ready, Sarah?
Ready?
You sure?
Yeah. How's it?
Okay. Let's call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, let's take roll. Who's here?
Lee Brayley here.
Janet Prentice here.
Alan Angel is here.
And Jorgensen here.
Fisher Fisher here.
I know, we got a full house. Welcome. And we've got a relatively short agenda, but just in case anybody have a conflict they want to identify?
No.
No? All right, we got none of those. So let's dig right in. We've got a couple of zone change requests in front of us. One of them we briefly discussed last meeting. That's the first one here. So I'd like to open the public hearing on a zone change for parcel AB 1311-B. From single family to RE10. This is your chance as public to make comments if you have any. Let's give the folks online a chance to chime in first if we want here. And looks like there's just a couple of folks online. Anybody there have anything to say about this first agenda item?
Yeah, we're opposed to it.
And who, could you state your name?
Patricia and Mark Parker, 2826 Purple Sage Road.
Okay, anything else you want to say about that?
Yeah, we're talking about the zone change.
Yeah.
It's like, I just don't feel like that we should be able to allow a zone change when we just don't want a zone change. It's always been like that. We don't want it to happen. So
Shouldn't be
that's-
shouldn't be able to move in and buy a piece of parcel property and then arbitrarily just change the zone that fits your needs. You have a whole valley in Gooseberry that abide by the existing zoning and we don't want it changed.
Why do you want?
It's not a conversation,
It's not a
sorry.
public forum?
Yeah, but it's not for,
Oh,
you
okay.
talk to us.
No, I'm
That's
just
okay.
curious why somebody would be so interested in their neighbors. It's not my property, by the way. I'm
Okay.
just curious why somebody would be so interested in their neighbor's business, especially when it's so far away. Has nothing to do with you.
It's right across the street from me.
Right.
Okay, let's hang on here. It's a public forum where everybody gets a chance to say their piece. And we're gonna try not to make it a conversation as much as just a chance for people to speak. And so, just for the record, since there are some rules with regard to how the state requires us to hold public hearings. One, there's a limit to what you can, to the amount of time you can speak, and we'll determine that up here. And two, before you talk, we want you to say your name. So are you folks online?
Any address.
You don't have to say your address anymore. Are the folks online, are you done with what you wanted to comment? You're on record of opposing it.
You want to say anything else?
Anything else? Do you want to indicate
You
any
want to
reason
add
why?
any additional information?
No.
He's here and impaired, so I got to explain to him.
No worries, no worries. Okay, well, thank you for your comment.
Mhm.
And I think the gentleman in the hat here wanted to have one of this.
Oh, yeah, David Wilson. Yeah, I'm just curious. I think it's an interesting community
That's Jeff.
that loves beauty. You would think you'd want more of it, not less of it. So I'm curious as to why people would be interested in diminishing somebody's plan to make something more beautiful, and instead would like to see it less beautiful and more dumpy.
Okay, good comment. Yeah,
Gloria Charles, 864 West Foothill Drive. If only this were a perfect world and everybody's image of what was beautiful were the same, we'd be in perfect harmony. And I would love that so much, but my experience has not been that.
That's right, but
okay, you're done. That's it? Okay, thanks. Yes,
Felicia Gardner, and I'm just running, so I just want to know what RE stands for.
That's rural estate. So this is going from
It's essentially a mansion.
a zone of, it's not a conversation, please. We can't have this. It's going from single family, that's what they're at, it is currently zoned, to rural estate 10, which would allow them to have animals and a variety of other things. Sure. Yeah,
Like one gentleman said, I live in Gooseberry. I'm directly in line of sight. And I keep my place up very nice and continue. I was at the county today. I spent a little time there. The gentleman on April 12th, 2020, done everything right. He owns the land. The county verified that. My problem is the same thing we were here the last time about. Apple Valley. I talked to the county about Apple Valley. And what Apple Valley should follow is what the county does. Why hasn't the paperwork been turned in for him having an application? Not the application itself, but the same paperwork that's turned in to the county, the survey. Everything has to be done properly.
sure, gotcha.
And why doesn't Apple Valley do it? Personally, I think Apple Valley doesn't do it. They either don't know how, or they just don't want to, or they just don't need the money. Because it does cost money for somebody to go through the paperwork in Apple Valley. And we're here for the same reason we were here the last time we turned it down. Paperwork I was coded for it. Paperwork has to be done properly. And that's all I'm asking for. He owns the land, but Apple Valley needs to do their portion. And then he's moving in with a violation. Now, there's been a nuisance complaint filed. And the violation is minor, easy fix. This has been going on for a year, and everybody knows about it. A shipping container, 200 square feet and over, a 40-foot, 8-foot shipping container needs a permit. Easy solution. If he would connect with Apple Valley and make sure it's correct. I'll tell you why I'm against it. For one reason, beautifying it. And I have a mobile home sitting out in front. But looking at down my line of sight is 2 fifth wheelers. And I'm not partial with shipping containers. They belong where I worked on a shipping dock. But that's the code. The code says you can have them. Let's wait till he puts about 8 of them on that 20 acres, and then maybe we'll do something there. Apple Valley needs to fill out the correct paperwork. They have done nothing compared to the county. So there is my reason why.
Okay, thanks. Yep.
Mark Wasowski, 1024 West Little Canyon. You had in your agenda package, there was a letter from Mark Bateman, and I'd like to address that letter. I feel Mr. Bateman's letter is a suppression of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution for residents who have some questions regarding the rezoning. We have a right to hold our government accountable. The town and planning commission are subject to state and town codes for subdivision or rezoning to be done correctly. If opposition to a subdivision and rezoning of a lot that was not done correctly in the first place is considered bullying, then, and not a good neighbor, then I am a bully and not a good neighbor, and I'll wear that crown proudly. Okay, my question is, the record of survey, there's a record of survey at the county, but it's not signed off by the town. And the transfer deed showing the sale has never been signed off by the town. So what I'm saying is, how can you do a rezone when you don't have the proper paperwork done?
Okay, thanks for your question. Anybody
Oh,
else?
and also there's a road going through it, and what if a proposed road going through it, and what if they decide to subdivide? And also, why isn't he going for RE20 instead of RE10?
Anybody else? Okay, let's close the public hearing. Thank you all for your comments.
I didn't get an answer.
It's public comment. It's not public.
Oh, I thought it was public hearing.
Yeah, it's public hearing.
Well,
We're going to talk amongst ourselves now. I closed the public hearing just now. Let's go ahead and have the discussion about this before we open the hearing on the next one. I think that's a better order to do things. Taylor, I did have a question for you. Last time this came up, we had the parcel number mismarked, which is why we're back here. My memory is of that there were some of these issues that were raised tonight with regard to the legalities of how the parcel changed hands. You had indicated that there was a letter somewhere where the town had in fact approved.
Yeah, we approved the lot split
The
and.
lot split and
And we
the
never
transfer.
recorded a record of survey with the county because it had already been recorded. And that's how we caught the illegal lot split to begin with, is because they had it recorded to them, which identified it was illegal. So then we made them go through our process, fill out the application, pay the fees, and then that was it. Because it was already recorded through the county, they said we didn't need to record it again.
They said we didn't need to.
Yes.
Okay.
So
And
they've done it all. They've done it all.
Yeah, they paid their fees, they did everything on our end, they gave us all their documentation, application.
And as I understand it, the town has to approve a transfer deed too. Do we have any record of having done that too?
I'm not sure on that one. That one I
No,
need to
Sean,
look
if that's
into.
true. We have
No,
to-
there's no reason for us to approve the deed itself. Nor do I think, does the town want to get into reading
Yeah.
the individual deeds and making a legal determination. What the law is geared towards is if there has been an illegal split of properties, the jurisdiction has the right to go through and approve that, but it is subject to their ordinances. So for example, if the lot that was split and it required 10,000 square foot lots and the lot was only 9, they would have to change it and make it come into compliance that way. But if it's in compliance with your zoning and your ordinances, you can simply approve it as you did.
Okay.
And I agree with the county. If it's already been recorded that way and it's in compliance with the lot sizes, then you're
No,
fine.
we're good. Okay. All right. And I think I looked this up, but I don't have a memory of it. Does anybody remember what this is zoned in the general map?
It's zoned
Single
as,
family.
Single family.
in the general plan, I believe it was RE, and I can look for you right
I'll double
now.
check.
Yeah, let's look
Yeah,
right now.
You can just pull it
That
up.
was for 1 acre.
I just don't remember if it's RE or for single. family. Not that that's a,
I can't remember what it was. I just remember, I'm pretty sure it was RE. Let's double check
No, it's single family.
Single family.
on the map, but the general plan.
Yeah.
Let's have a look.
okay, while she's looking that up, anybody have any further comment about the application?
It sounds like everything's been resolved.
Yeah, I mean, the big issue we had last time was that the parcel number was
Well,
misidentified when it went out to the.
My only comment to all this is that in general, the town, most of us feel that we want to stay rural. We want to stay larger. He's taking a 20 piece and he's gonna make it 2 lots, not 20, we're not 21 acre lots, right? So that keeps us rural. That's what the town wants, is rural. We want to stay big.
Less traffic, I don't want 40 more houses.
Certainly, in the short term here, it seems to address what a lot of people are
Right.
often complaining about,
Right.
which is too much
I like
processing.
larger lots.
And as far as I'm concerned, I mean, there are issues with regard to ordinances and so on. That's obviously not relevant to a zone change application, but it is something that the town needs to get a handle on.
Right, and I agree with that.
And if, to whatever extent minutes are being identified here for
Yeah, I'm
future
recording
reference,
everything, so
um,
we'll get it.
some of the things that residents raise in these kinds of forums, it seems to me, one of the common threads is we, as a town, we've struggled to have continuity of staffing. And we're about to face yet another, I'm fully supportive of you, Taylor, going and furthering your education. I totally understand why you're moving on. But we're about to face yet another transition. And I would just like to go on record as encouraging town staff to figure out how to resolve the staffing issue. Our politics should not determine this constant turnover fluctuation in staffing. We need some continuity. So to whatever extent a chair of a planning commission can go on record as saying, let's get some good, long-term, well-qualified staff in place and keep them.
Yes.
I want that on the record. Okay. Anybody else have anything further to say about the zone application? And what did you find out about?
So here's the general plan right here. This is the color coordinates. As you can see, it's colored for RE1.
All right, okay, so it's
This is a
rural
better,
estate as opposed to single family anyway.
Yep.
Okay, anybody have a motion for this? No, let's go ahead and, we're doing the discussion and we're moving on directly to number 3 and then we'll circle back to number 2.
So you got this one.
I move that we approve the zone change for parcel AB-1311-B from single family, from SF to RE-10.
a second.
Any discussion on that further? No? All right, let's have a vote. Those in favor say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? All right, so that carries. Okay. We'll move on to number 2. So I'd like to open the public hearing on the zone change application for parcel AB 1377B-1 from rural estates to ag, which is a transition we don't often get an application for. So I think the whole thing is, how big is it?
7.8, well, depending on whose paperwork you look at, 7.65, 7.85.
Between 5 and 10. All right.
And just for the record, this is also for a general plan amendment as well.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay. So let's start again online. Anybody online want to have, start the public comments? All right, not seeing any. What about anybody in the room? Yeah.
My name is Amy Alkema. I guess I have questions, but you can't answer, right?
We
It's just
can.
my comments.
It's just
Okay. What exactly does it mean when you switch from RE to ag? You're allowing more farm animals, more buildings? What does it mean?
In this particular case, there's not a whole lot of difference. It is going to, let's see, depending on the number of, with rural estate, there are some limits within the ordinances to the number of animals.
Okay.
100 points per acre.
Number of animals, number of buildings, and stuff like that.
But yeah, a parcel this size, it's going to be minimal change.
So if it switches to ag, do those limitations go away in respect to animals and buildings? Or is it?
No, it does not. And 7 acres, you can have, 700 points worth of animals you can have. Each animal is valued at a different point. We did this for quite a while. And you can have outbuildings and a barn.
Okay, so I guess I'm curious as to why, if there's not that much difference, why go through the zone change?
Well, there is some tax advantages to having it.
Oh, tax advantage.
Yeah.
Definitely tax advantage.
Utah has a thing that's sometimes known as green belt, which allows for a relatively low tax, property tax on land that's being used primarily for agriculture or livestock.
So in terms of outbuildings or barns and animals, nothing really changes?
A little bit, not much.
What do you mean by a little bit?
Sale permitting for, if I may?
Yeah, you're the applicant, right?
Sale permitting as an agricultural being able to grow and sell produce from the property as a business instead of having to have a commercial style business. It's a farm style business. Instead of having to go, oh, hey, I've got to get a business license as a commercial business to be able to sell my livestock or my produce. I'm going agriculture and I'm considered a farm.
So it's less rules.
So there is a lot more less rules I have to abide by, but there are still, it makes me as a farmer, because that's what I am, easier for my life and well-being.
It's primarily a property tax issue.
And that.
Significant. I mean, it goes from thousands to pennies.
Does it change like residential to commercial in any way, or is
No.
it's still residential, it's still agricultural?
Yes,
Okay.
and I want your number, I mean, I buy produce.
We're not quite there yet, but, you know, we're good.
Property tax statement, just in case anybody's curious, a typical, your typical 1 acre, you're gonna have like anywhere from, depending on the house size, anywhere from $2,000 to $3,500 taxes. On a typical acre that's green belted, it's $5.
Yeah,
Yes.
significant.
It's huge.
Okay, one more question. In terms of shipping containers, is there any limit or regulation on those?
There is
Yes.
still, it's all, those ordinances don't change regardless of,
Okay.
Yeah.
So that still has to be the same.
Yes.
good question.
Thank you.
Hey, Roger, will you just state your name for the record?
Roger Ashmore.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Margaret Osowski, 102 for West Little Canyon. Isn't that property, where you're trying to change it to agricultural? Isn't there all the properties around it, aren't they rural estate properties?
No, the one across the highway, man.
Almost all of them are ag.
It's almost all ag.
Agriculture.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
Sorry, man.
now that I've seen where it is on the map, yeah.
Then we just have one for the, they're building their house right now. They brought in some lots of, what's the name?
Spenloves?
Spenloves. We just do, yeah, Spenloves just went ag, just
Yeah.
like a month or two ago.
Yeah.
Right.
okay, any other comments? I sort of assumed this one would be
This is easy. It should be
relatively
easy.
uncontroversial. Yeah,
You
Margaret?
can make it controversial if you want.
No, please. Sean wants to get out of here as soon as the rest of
Don't challenge me, you will.
Yes, Margaret.
Question, on the state thing where you go to the public hearings and notices, it showed that a public hearing for general plan amendment on parcel, whatever his parcel is, but yet on ours, it's not showing that
On ours, what do you mean?
On the agenda.
on the agenda. So there might be some people that look at the state one and they might have, not realized they look at ours and it's two different agendas.
Okay, thanks for pointing that out. Appreciate that. We'll try to get that right moving forward. All right, let's close the public hearing. Thank you all. As an applicant, is there anything else you want to say before we deliberate?
No, it's just the first step of many steps that I'm planning on
All right.
for my property, so
Gotcha.
we'll see you in a year.
Okay. You're gonna put a high rise.
Well, no, hopefully I'll be able to build a house in here and all of that, so. yeah.
Gotcha. All right, guys, anything, any red flags you see?
No, I like seeing things agriculture and large lots.
Yeah.
I
And
think,
just-
in the times that I've known that property, I think that I've committed to that.
Yeah.
My property's been cleaned up.
Yes,
You
it
get
has.
animals
Yes,
for that.
it has.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time cleaning up, putting fences up, and trying to get it look at least somewhat presentable and.
I appreciate it, because I do look at it.
We do have, I just want to clarify for, yeah,
And it's all low density, that should be low density.
since the application, since the technical owner of the property, we do have someplace on record that you're
I'm-
the stand-in for the owner, right?
Yeah, I'm a stand-in,
We
kind
have
of,
that.
sort of, yeah.
Is that part of the?
Yeah, there should be a letter in there
Okay.
from both of the
All
owners.
right, just,
So,
I
yeah.
thought I saw that.
Yeah, there is a letter in there.
Yeah, Diane couldn't make it, she wasn't feeling well, and she is here sometimes and up north,
That's
so
cool.
she.
I just want to make sure we're not running afoul of the rules here. All right, anybody have a motion on this one? And this one, let's go ahead and do the I guess, the
General
general map change first, and then let's vote on
So
the,
low density, LD.
yeah.
In the general.
So since it's currently on the general map, is it RE1?
It's RE1.
RE1.
We change it
We
to
want
low
to change it
density.
to, yeah.
Low density. Well, I make a motion that we approve the zone change, send it to the town council for their approval on parcel AB 1377-B1 from RE to ag, and in conjunction with this, that this we reflect on the general map to be low density.
Sound good? Got that, Taylor? Anybody second that?
Okay.
Let's give it to Lee this time.
All right.
Sounds good.
All right, any further discussion? Good, all right, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, hearing none, that passes, thank you all. Okay, thanks to everybody for their lively conversation on this one. So I thought there for a minute that we weren't gonna get your presence on this one, but I'm thrilled, Sean, that you're here to help us do our annual training on what it means to hold meetings like this. This will be either super interesting to the nerds or super boring to anybody that's not want to nerding out about Utah law. So you're all welcome. But we have to, legally, we have to go through training once a year to understand how to run meetings like this. So Sean, who is...
We're losing them.
Yeah, we're losing them. They're not, these are, as soon as I said nerd, anybody that doesn't fit in that category.
Can I say, I've already done something like forward?
Yeah, you please, you don't feel, we will
Now, I thought
not
this-
hold it against anybody if you want to ditch us.
I thought this
will.
was.
I don't, it was the other lawyer that taught us back when I was serving.
If it weren't required, I got news for you, I wouldn't be here.
Aren't the town council supposed to be here too?
I was under the impression that we were going to do a joint, but
They're not going to.
looks like we have one. And I'm okay to stand over here, right? 'Cause I kind of want to stand off to the side because I want to see the screen as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
Slides in here, right? Or are they gonna be up on the?
He decided to do a video rather than.
Oh, okay, cool.
So that's just for your own reference. if you wanna have
Right.
those.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
because I'm sure all of you have seen the state auditor's website where they do a great video. What I wanted to do is just go through that video, but also answer some questions. Before we start the video though, wanted to talk about a couple of cleanup things that that I've talked about before, but as you've said, we've had changeover in both elected officials and staff. Right now with the state of the new law with electronic meetings
Can I get
is,
order?
Oh, yeah, we're gonna need some quiet, guys.
Guy,
Sorry.
so that there's a new state law that's effective, was effective on May 5th on electronic meetings. So the town is going to need to adopt either an ordinance or resolution or a policy. I recommend just a policy on how you conduct electronic meetings.
Okay.
What that means is, right now, without that, you can't have one of your members come in electronically via Zoom or something and attend. We had that in place because of the governor's order, because of COVID, and we could do that every 30 days. As far as I'm aware, and I looked again on your ordinances, and I don't see anything in your ordinances right now that allows for that electronic participation. So you'll want to get that in place. That's something that I think you'll want to discuss internally on how many can actually do that, barring an emergency, because in emergent situations, you can do that. But that doesn't preclude you, of course, from having your meetings broadcast. It's just.
It's perfectly okay for us to have town residents participate electronically, but just
Yes.
currently not so much
For the planning commission and the council members, that's right. And so you want to take a look at that. I'd urge you to do that as quickly as possible. I like the way that you have this right now.
Can we make a formal recommendation to the council to get that?
Yeah, I was gonna put it on their agenda next week.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Can we also cover
telephonic, if somebody's out of town, if they can phone in
Yeah,
and participate that way?
yeah, we can include phone in that.
That with that phone with the same situation we found.
It can, the statute that applies is 52-4-207. I gave that to Taylor. And you may not have enough time between now and the next council meeting to get that done. I don't know what your situation is going to be. But as all attorneys, city attorneys do around the state, do not reinvent the wheel. We call each other and find out what others are doing. But when you do take advantage of that, be careful who you get it from, okay? Because sometimes there are jurisdictions that are overly complicated and you don't need that because you're not a Salt Lake City. But then there are some that may not have had advice of legal counsel. But call some of the other jurisdictions around here.
We should have, I mean, just in general, for whatever it's worth, there should be some common sense limit. I mean, we don't want to have a meeting where every town resident show up and there's nobody sitting.
That's exactly right.
You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And there might be sometimes when you want to get notification ahead of time before someone does that. And sometimes it's just better to say, look, we don't want you phoning in from the beach. You're going to be gone.
Yeah.
And we're
Like
just going to do
you.
it. Like me. Yes, I shouldn't have said that. As soon as I said that, I thought, no, not a good example. But yeah, like me.
And listen, none of us that's on the beach wants to be in this meeting.
That's right. Can you imagine? No. So anyway, I wanted to bring that up. Another thing that I wanted to bring up is I wanted to make sure that you all are signing a conflict of interest form. Now, this form I'm holding up here is a form we developed in St. George, but you should be aware that conflicts of interest can even be as simple as having a business license in your jurisdiction. If you have a business license jurisdiction, you should be filling out these forms. You should fill them out anyway if you don't have a conflict, and you would mark no. The reason why is because obviously you oversee business licensing, and that could affect. Doesn't mean that conflict prohibits you from taking action. Our laws are very loose in this state on those situations where you absolutely have to preclude yourself, because obviously everybody from the legislature on down has a potential conflict. And of course, if we eliminated everyone that does business in any jurisdiction, we'd have no one to serve.
I have a little home business, so I have to.
Do you have a business license in the town? Then you should have filled out a conflict of interest form.
Yeah, I don't think any of us have ever, at least I haven't even been presented with.
So, okay, so, and I recommend that maybe every 2 years you go through and have people fill them out again. And of course, with the Apple Valley Town Council, with your turnover, you'll be having elected officials filling them out every 2 weeks. So,
yeah.
But
every time Dale walks in and out that door, we have to.
you don't know if he's coming back, right? And so, but really, what the best thing to do is anytime you onboard an employee or a new council member or a new planning commission member, just have them fill it out.
Why don't we, it's a real bummer, Taylor, that you're not going to be here long term. That's great for you to remember this. It'd be great if, in conjunction with this meeting every year, we just do this paperwork. Just every year, just out of policy.
Yeah.
Because people's status change, you may have bought into a business and people have been caught on that when it purely was just benign. You know, they just overlooked it. They didn't think about it. And then someone says, oh, wait a minute, you own half of the Chevron now and you never filled out one of these and you just don't think about that, right? So just a good idea to do.
Once a year is probably pretty good.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't hurt to just look at it to make sure if anything needs to be updated, we should do it.
So just wanted to bring that up as well. Now, let's talk about meeting procedures, because that's something that I've talked about with various council and mayors. We use first of all, you should have a written policy on your procedures. Again, do not reinvent the wheel on that. That's something I've brought up before with the various administrations. We use a modified rule, Robert's Rules of Order, right? If you've ever had the joyful opportunity to go to a state Democrat or Republican convention, you know how ridiculous they get. especially, I can see this down here with the Salt Lake County contingent, that get up to our point of order and everything else, and then you spend all this time. We're not gonna go through that, right? We use a modified rules. But we should, and you need to, under state law, have some policies that explain how you're going to do that. For example, what I see kind of that's being omitted in the procedures here that I brought up with various planning commissions and town councils is when you have an item before you, you have the applicant come up, the applicant speaks, they say what they're going to do, and then as a chair or as a mayor, you can ask the questions, council members, commission members ask the questions that they have. And then when that's done, then you call for a motion, right? Is there a motion? Yes, I move that we approve this zone change from RE to ag. I second that motion. The next step that always gets omitted is, is there any discussion on the motion? And you really should give that opportunity because a lot of times there's clarifications that someone wants to make. For example, are you including the recommendations from the planning commission council on this? Oh, yes, we forgot. We want to include the recommendation to put up a fence, not put up a fence, whatever it may be. And we want to have that in there. Okay, if they're hearing no discussion or if that's, and then of course, if someone says, yes, we want to include that, then you go back to the person making the motion and you ask them, are you okay with that? And they can say yes, or they can say no, I'm not. If they say yes, then you turn to the person that seconded the motion. You say, are you okay with that? Yes, I am. Okay, so now that becomes the motion. And so that part seems to get forgotten a lot. Let's do that at the town council level. Let's do that because that's an important part of that discussion. In fact, if someone makes a motion or I want to do this, I want to approve that zone change. And then someone says, well, I'm not sure about that zone change. Really, what you should say is the mayor, as the person conducting the meeting, the chair say, wait, but hold on. Do we have a second to that motion? Sure. Yes, I second that. Okay, now let's have a discussion. And that makes it easier for the clerk. In fact, it got so chaotic in St. George that finally with our city recorder, we on all of our minutes, we put in a bold motion and second so that you could easily look at the minutes and see, because we started having people making motions and then someone else would talk and then you didn't know what the original motion was or anything. It just makes it very orderly that way. So that's one of the things that I think should happen in your modified rules. Another thing on your public hearings, it really works best if you have the applicant come up first.
Before we open the hearing or after we?
Before you open the hearing.
Okay.
Because a lot of times the applicant, with what they present and what you all ask them, can answer a lot of the questions that someone has in the audience.
Can we have, as part of our policy on that, again, I'm assuming town council is probably going to be drafting policies, right? Or
it would be from the town council.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I would love to recommend that we actually have on our agenda a Q&A with the applicant prior to, and then have a separate agenda item where we open the hearing. So that's really clear. I think that would be really helpful. I think a lot of the times we get ourselves kind of in knots because we hear from the public and the applicants mixed in.
For example, tonight, what does he want to do with that?
We could have had that all written up front.
And then of course, he's trying to respond, but that kind of makes it difficult in the public hearing portion. So what you do say, okay, well, is the applicant present? Applicant, would you like to come forward and explain? Yes, what I'm doing is I want to sell produce. I just want to build one house on there and I see no reason to have this. I want to greenbelt it, whatever it may be. They can say all those things. You guys can ask the questions. After that, say, thank you, anything else? Okay, now I'm going to open the public hearing.
The other thing I'd like to do, just because we do this every time as a matter of just rhythm, is the order of our agenda. I'd like to have, after a public hearing, I'd like to have the discussion and whatever the action is about that particular topic next on the agenda, so that we can get into a rhythm. I don't want to do 2 hearings and then 2 discussions. I don't think that just breaks it up.
Oh, no, that's difficult. Now, and so doing it that way is totally your purview. But I'll say what we do in St. George is we have a section that just lists all the public hearings. And we just know that on public hearing, on item number 4, that's a public hearing for the zone change. Now with that, after we have the public hearing, we're gonna go to item number 10, which is actually that zone change, and then do them together. You could do it either way.
Yeah, we do that as a matter of course here. I just think it might be useful since we're gonna publish an agenda.
Right.
Let's be upfront that we're gonna do them in order.
Yes.
So take action on something we had a hearing, rather than jumping around like.
Right, and I think that flows much better for you, flows for the audience, and
Well, it
also,
gives people a chance that are here for a particular topic to leave. If
Sure.
they want, for one thing. That's-
yes, and everybody wants to get out when they can. I totally get that. I feel the same way during meetings. So, and it also gives the applicant that opportunity to get up front for you guys to answer all those questions.
Yeah, I love that idea of having a specific agenda item where there's Q&A.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then lastly, and we'll talk about this a little bit and I think it's on the auditors and may not, but I can't remember exactly. Agendas. One thing I noticed about Apple Valley's agenda, which makes it difficult for me, even as the attorney, is you list the property IDs, that's fine. We don't, but it doesn't help the layperson know where it is.
Yeah.
So we do, and a lot of times we have properties that don't have an address, but we'll say it's approximately 750 South Bubbling Wells Way.
Okay.
And then we'll say what it is. And so I don't see anything wrong with listing the property ID. And because that certainly identifies it, but give an approximate location of where it is so that the public that's looking at it can say, oh, even so, if I live in Salt Lake, but I just bought a 20-acre parcel next to it, well, that is actually next to my piece. And I might want to say something there.
I like that. I think it'd be beneficial to have both, because a lot of these folks, they see that number and they research that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would want.
Because it's easy to go to the county recorder's office.
But not everybody knows that they can go to the website and look that up.
That's for sure.
And so that's,
No, I'm saying we should have both.
yeah, have both, that's right. And that's why I say have both, and I agree with you. Because not everybody knows they can go look that up or where to look it up. And what we're trying to do is make it as easy as possible for the general public to see what's going on.
Sure.
That's the whole point of the agenda. So we want to try to be as specific as possible.
Perfect. I like that.
I also, well, let's start with, let's go through the auditor's website right now. They have this video. And Taylor, I may ask you to stop sometimes because I may want to just emphasize a couple of things.
So what's the Open and Public Meetings Act? It's the state law that ensures government actions and deliberations are openly conducted. Before we continue, keep in mind that this video is an overview, and exceptions may exist based on your entity type. So what's considered an open and public meeting? It's when a governing body majority meets to discuss or act upon government business. It includes the meetings sometimes referred to as workshops or executive sessions. Regular meetings, public hearings, electronic meetings, and emergency meetings are all open and public meetings. Open and public meetings don't include chance or social meetings. A public hearing is a type of open and
So
public
can
meeting.
you pause that real quick, because that is a question I had from the day I was asked to serve on the commission. Somebody told me once that not more than like 3 of us can go to a party or something.
And that's not true.
That's not true.
No,
Okay.
not at all. And so what they're saying is chance meetings, you go to
Social
someone's
meetings,
wedding
no.
reception or whatever,
Okay.
do not take that opportunity to be discussing
Sure.
things that are on the agenda or
But if
likely.
we all happen to go to a 4th of July or a party or a birthday party or something like that, that's not running afoul of.
That is not running afoul of law. And
That's-
also,
That was a mistake.
and another point I'd like to make too here is, what qualifies as a meeting or a body that's open to public hearings or public meetings is not every meeting of the town. For example, with you're putting together a joint utility committee or commission, that is not a public meeting.
Right, it's not a.
Where everybody could be invited. If you have a staff meeting, again, not a public meeting. But if you have a committee that you formed for the town, like the events committee, that's a public meeting.
Okay.
Because you form that, if you have 2 or more people on that, then the public, it has to be open to the public. They should be able to attend. And I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't want someone to attend.
So it's kind of the difference between what constitutes government versus staffing.
Versus staffing,
Right.
that's right. So if you have a committee that you've created by ordinance, by resolution, or even if you put together an ad hoc committee to say, we want an ad hoc committee with members from Hilldale to discuss the possibility of doing roads together or whatever, then meeting should be open to the public. Okay.
Okay.
Public hearings happen when a government adopts a budget or imposes or increases taxes or fees. An electronic meeting is a type of open public meeting that's convened electronically, such as via phone or the internet. Remember, the governing body must adopt a resolution, rule, or ordinance allowing and governing electronic meetings. An open or public meeting may be closed to discuss any of the following: a person's character, competence, or health, security personnel, devices, or systems deployment, collective bargaining, litigation, purchase, sale, or lease of property if an open discussion would prevent the entity from completing the transaction on the best terms, investigations of criminal misconduct, and private or protected information for the Utah Procurement Code, including trade secrets. 2/3 of the governing body need to vote yes to close a meeting. Quick math lesson. 2 divided by 3 equals 66.7%. Let's say your governing body has 5 members. If 3 out of the 5 members vote yes, that equals 60%, which is not equal to or greater than 66.7%, which means you're 1 member short and instead need 4 out of 5 members to vote yes. During a closed meeting, a governing body can't interview someone applying to fill an elected position, discuss filling a midterm vacancy or temporary absence, discuss the character, competence, or health of a person whose name was submitted for consideration to fill a midterm vacancy or temporary absence, or approve any ordinance, resolution, rule, regulation, contract, or appointment.
Could we stop it right there for a minute? So the things that you can close a meeting for are very, very limited. I will say this. I can only think of one time in 18 years as city attorney in St. George that we had a closed meeting of the planning commission, and that was involving litigation that needed to be explained to them. But as a rule, we've said no closed meetings as a planning commission. There's really no reason why you should have a closed meeting. And those rules governing closed meetings are very strict and limited. And so in fact, we have a rule with any of our committees too. No closed meetings for them at all. It's only the town council that can do that.
To whatever extent this is being recorded and somebody may watch this later, a meeting that's open is not an open opportunity for conversation.
That's correct.
It's just, you get to talk, you get to listen. It's not a free-for-all. That's been the sort of history of Apple Valley, as we saw a little bit today. People just, they're here, they think they can just, and that we can't do work if it's a constant conversation.
No, and I thought you did a very good job there. What you need to balance is the need for, in a public hearing, for those that want to speak to be able to come up and speak. But it really is not, doesn't necessarily mean that it's a question and answer period, although you could choose to answer some of those questions. Again, some of those questions will be answered if the applicant speaks first, but it should be orderly, as you said.
But even that's different. A public hearing is an opportunity for the public to speak, but an open meeting is not.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, and I want to be clear. I was only talking about public.
Right, I just want to make sure
today.
I don't think that's clear to everybody that lives in Apple Valley.
No. And why is that fair? Well, because people look at it and they say on the agenda, say this is public hearing, and these are just public meeting items. Had I known that I could come and speak, I would have come. Now, that doesn't preclude you as chair or the mayor from saying, you know what, they have something here that's really important. We want to hear. Okay, let's listen to what this person has to say. It doesn't preclude you from doing that, but generally, a public meeting is just for the public to observe what's going on, what's being transacted.
And I don't mean to cast aspersions. I just mean, we have, and particularly us, we're a non-elected volunteer group of people who have
Non-paid, non-member.
not all the time in the world. So none of us wants to spend an extra hour just in dialogue. We have to have an opportunity to talk amongst ourselves.
Well, and sometimes it's counterproductive to what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's why in the law, there are certain things that require a public hearing, because we've looked at those, the legislature's looked at those and said, these are things that are important enough that we feel like you have to take comment from the public.
Yeah, and we're fully supportive of that. I never want to leave the impression that I don't want input, but I will, particularly as chair, be pretty hardcore about not letting things get out of hand. First of all, if it's not a public hearing, it better be a really good thing you have to say. And I hope there's enough, I hope we respect each other enough to ask permission to speak. This just free for all. When I first started going to Apple Valley Town meetings in previous generations, it was a free for all. And I don't know how anything ever got done. It's gotten better and better over time. And I think that's just because we up here have been a little bit more specific about what we're allowing. And Dale has something he wants to say now finally, so.
I'm just gonna see if you let me speak.
Yeah. I'll let you.
You can let me. You know, she said, yes, Dale, you can speak. He said, Dale has something.
Yes, Dale,
I don't.
you may
Okay.
speak for
I'm just
20
being
seconds.
facetious.
By the way, when I talked about the applicant speaking, I do see a lot of times when the items are brought up by the town council and the planning commission, where the applicant's not even invited to speak at the beginning. And that's where I
Yeah,
think it's always important.
That's
Is
a
the
mistake on our
applicant
part.
here or represent the applicant here, have them come speak, even if it's not a public hearing, give them the opportunity to present their item.
and that's why I like the idea, Taylor, of having just in general, just a matter of practice, have a Q&A with the applicant whenever there's an application.
So one other thing that I'm going to bring up, since we're on this topic, and that is, I understand that staff is limited in Apple Valley, but what I've seen in the past is elected officials, town council members at planning commission speaking in favor of, or that should not occur.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can get the turnover.
Say that again?
We've had elected
We used to-
officials from the town
yeah,
council.
We used to have quite a bit of input from
The town
elected
council members.
officials during.
Planning
public
commission discussions, that's
And,
right.
It shouldn't, you're right.
That's right. That should not be taking place. Now, I understand that you're limited in staff, and sometimes the mayor might be the one that had to review that. Hopefully you'll get a replacement for John, and that person should be here
Yeah.
presenting that
Exactly.
for you.
I long for some professional, full-time, if we can afford it, staffing
Yeah.
that has
Even if you have a
lots and
part-time
lots
person.
and lots of responsibilities.
That's right. And then lastly, I've seen the reverse. I've been at town council meetings where members of this commission have stood up in opposition to an item that had a recommendation from you guys.
Yeah.
And one item in particular was gonna come back. And I looked at that and said,
Yeah.
this cannot happen. If I was the attorney for that applicant, well, there would have been a different outcome, I think, on that one, because
Yeah.
you can't do that. I understand. But you all are in a unique position. You know, we all give up some things when we take our positions. I was just having that conversation with one of our police officers on the way here, driving here today. Like, we know that some people in different positions are held to a different standard. So you guys on the planning commission, you have a greater opportunity in the public to speak in a way, because you get to vote and make a recommendation. Now, you may have voted against it, but everybody else outvoted you. Oh, well.
Yeah.
But resist that urge to go to the town council meeting and now stand up and say, I oppose this. Yeah, because it takes away the appearance of you being an unbiased and open deliberative body. You've had that opportunity.
I agree. And I've had conversations over the course of the last couple of years with members of the commission, just in general, about being careful. Anything we say in any kind of official communication form, email, written communication of some sort signed. That's official. So we have to, we just can't, we have to keep our personal opinions to ourselves in those conversations. As you point out, we've stepped into a role here that basically means we gotta keep our mouths shut unless we're speaking as an official member of the planning commission. Otherwise, we shouldn't have an opinion.
And you can cause some liability.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, everything sent via email in particular is open to a grammar request.
absolutely.
And so we make an offhand comment about, yeah, I agree or I disagree or whatever, the citizen, that could really bite us in the.
Yep, and as someone who's had to release documents that have had some offhanded comments in there in the past that people were embarrassed of it, but that's what happens. You just, if you don't want to, if you wouldn't have it written in the sky
Right.
for everyone to read.
Don't say it.
Well,
Well,
where it really gets to be challenging for us, and I know for me in particular, is when you're in the middle of a public hearing. As much as possible, you'll notice I try really hard to say thank you and then move on to the next person and try not to make it a dog. Because as soon as you get into a conversation with somebody, you're bound to say something you have no business saying. If you might say that, whatever that is you're about to say to somebody on the street, but if you say it up here, it's on the record now. And we gotta stop putting ourselves in potential legal jeopardy by just making personal judgments or comments or things. We, in our capacity up here, we should be listening.
And it may seem innocuous, but to someone out there, I can remember one time when a comment was made of, well, they should be able to do that because they've had that property for 20 years or something. And oh my gosh, if I was a person that just bought my property a year ago and I'm going up for a zone change too, I would be going, wait a minute, does that mean you get preference if you're, and that's not what the intent was. I totally understand that that's not what was meant. But that's not what people are going to.
We gotta be careful. Whenever there's questions, just don't. That's probably the best.
It's always tough, right?
It's hard for me.
Okay.
Things character, competence, or health, or security personnel, devices, or systems deployment. No recording or minutes are required. However, the presiding member needs to sign a sworn written statement stating such. If the closed meeting is held for any other reason, a recording must be made. Emergency meetings may be held to discuss an urgent matter due to unforeseen circumstances. In order to hold the meeting, the best notice that's feasible is provided at the time, location, and topics to be considered. An attempt is made to contact all governing body members, and the governing body majority approves the meeting. Entities that hold regular meetings need to provide notice at least annually of the year's meeting schedule. As always, the notice must include date, time, and place. For entities that don't hold regularly scheduled regular meetings, 24 hours notice must be provided. All meetings, whether regularly scheduled in advance over the course of the year or scheduled as needed, must provide no less than 24 hours notice of meeting agendas.
Can we pause it there? So what I want to say on that one is, we put out a just general notice that says, generally you have it on, let's just say second Tuesday or second Wednesday. Doesn't mean you can't deviate from it, right? As long as you give your 24-hour notice and things like that.
Okay.
So don't take that as meaning that you can never do that, or you have to go back and amend that notice. But at the beginning of every year, you just say, generally, this is when planning commission is, generally, this is when town.
By notice, does the state require us to give a particular kind of notice?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and so you always turn to your clerk and have them do that, but you have to put it on the state website.
Okay.
And on for different types of activities that you might be doing.
So we've had residents complain that an agenda didn't get posted somewhere publicly in the town office 24 hours ahead or something. It was 22 hours ahead. And oh no, we can't have a meeting. Is that a rule? I mean,
you should be published. You should be publicizing. And Taylor, what are you doing right now? As far
When
as
I'm posting agendas,
Yes.
I always post them here at the town office, at the bulletin board, on our website, and then on UPN.
and on UPN.
That's where they'll-
So we have to put it on our website, to the Utah Public Notice website. We should be posting it here at the town.
So we should be doing do we have to? I mean, my question is, if we don't, are we running afoul of?
I think it's required to be posted at the place the meeting's being held.
So
Yeah.
those three things,
So it has-
the fourth thing there at your mailbox, is it?
That's
Community
Yeah.
board.
not-
This is what I discourage. I discourage going above what the state requires as far as putting it in your ordinances,
Right, okay.
But I don't discourage you from doing things like putting it out at the post office. And if someone said, put it at the Chevron, you thought that's a good idea, we'll put it there. Because if you don't, you're not gonna be in trouble, right?
But we don't want to codify it in an ordinance.
Right, and then run afoul of your own ordinance. That's right. That's right. So again, that notice that goes out, that says at the beginning of each year, this is when we generally hold meetings for the planning commission, hold it for the town council. If you have another committee or commission that you have created, you would put those on there too. And then you're good to change those during the year.
Okay. And I'm sure that maybe they'll get to this, but the 24-hour notice requirement is for an agenda, but we have a 2-week requirement for public hearings.
You have the 10-day
10
requirement
day.
for.
Okay.
We always do 10 weeks because the 10-day usually
Or 10
falls on a Friday. And
2
we're
weeks.
not open Fridays. So.
But it is
Yeah.
10 days, so,
Yeah.
okay, that's good. I didn't realize we had.
Yeah,
a little bit of
it's 10 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So, so some of those have different requirements, but for a meeting itself, and then as I said, for an emergency meeting, like when we had our floods, we just have to make best efforts to notify everyone out there. So we sent it to the newspaper, we put it on the website, and we called all the council members and got everybody that we could
So
there.
those emergency meetings are technically open meetings. It's just.
They still are,
People
yes.
didn't have a chance to.
Just didn't have the chance maybe to get the 24 hours notice. Okay.
Public hearing is held, public notice requirements change. Make sure to distinguish between regular meeting notice requirements and public hearing notice requirements. For regular meetings, an entity is only required to notify a newspaper and doesn't need to pay to publish a notice. For public hearings, notice must be published in at least one issue of a newspaper. If a newspaper of general circulation isn't available, written notice is posted in 3 public places within the entity's boundaries. Regular meetings require 24 hours notice.
I have a question.
How do we address that?
We don't have a circulating newspaper.
We do.
So we have one that circulates in Apple Valley.
The Spectrum is the newspaper. And we just had that discussion of the bond, the PID notice requirement, but they're.
So we technically, I mean, do we pay to put it in?
We do. We pay every public hearing notice for the Spectrum.
Yeah. And there's been a push to get rid of those too. I mean, it used to be just a, kind of give you to the newspapers, right? But who reads the newspaper anymore?
Nobody.
So we've gotten rid of almost all the requirements for that publication and we're working.
So I mean, who gets to determine? I mean, technically, yeah, we can get the Spectrum, but is it, it's not an Apple Valley newspaper. So could we, if we chose, put our public hearing notices in 3 public places? And go around the Spectrum?
I will just say as your attorney for now.
Use the, okay, all right.
Yes, and so you could say that, could West Valley say that about the Tribune? Salt Lake Tribune, it's the Deseret News, who's Deseret? But you talk to the entities up there and they'll publish it in both, just to make sure they're covered and everything. So there's no reason not to do
Trying to
it.
save the town a couple bucks.
Yeah, I get it. And we've worked really hard to get rid of most of those requirements.
Public hearings require 7 days notice. For both regular meetings and public hearings, written notice must be posted at the principal office of the governing body, or, if no such office exists, at the building where the meeting will be held. Governing bodies must also provide notice of open public meetings on the public notice website at publicnotice.utah.gov. By posting on the website and providing the email of the local newspaper, governing bodies can also meet the requirement to notify a newspaper. However, other requirements such as publishing in a newspaper still apply. Typically, posting on the public notice website is done by the records officer, recorder, or clerk. However, it's the governing body's responsibility to ensure notice is provided. State Archives has prepared a training manual and quick guide for owners and posters, as well as training videos that can be accessed at their website at archives.utah.gov. If your entity is increasing a fee, Before undergoing true taxation for a property tax increase, be aware that there are additional notice and posting requirements. Public meeting agendas need to include reasonably specified topics to be considered, with each topic listed under a separate agenda item on the meeting agenda. The governing body may not consider a topic in an open meeting that wasn't on the agenda. If a new topic not on the agenda is raised by the public during an open meeting, the governing body may discuss the topic. However, final action may not be taken on the new topic during that meeting. Meeting minutes
pause that
and
for
the
a
body
minute.
over.
So again, that's an important concept there. It doesn't mean you can't discuss it, because I've been in meetings where the public bodies go, no, we can't talk about this on the agenda. That's not necessarily the case. Somebody might be here on another agenda item, but say, did you know that we're gonna be running sewer, water line, whatever, right through that property, and that's gonna require something else that might have to come up on an agenda that you would have to take action on? Well, you could still say, oh, we didn't know that. Maybe that's something that we want to hold off on this one for, or whatever, but you can't make a decision, say, well, we're gonna go ahead and approve that right now, because it's not on the agenda.
We can have all the discussion we want.
Yeah, and so,
we can use that discussion to talk about the topic that we're on the agenda,
right,
or make a decision on that agenda. So if that was gonna come up later, we can't make a decision on that until when it's on the agenda.
yeah, and most of the time when that comes up in the past, when meetings I've been in, we've just said, okay, good to know. Yeah, that's a concern. Maybe talked about it at 30,000 foot level, but waited for the agenda item before we got
Yeah,
down.
and we sometimes do that. We'll ask Taylor to put that on the agenda for future reference, or ask the town council. to do
Right,
that.
then that'll give other people notice and they can have the opportunity to come in and hear it.
Recordings are required for all open meetings, with limited exceptions. When an open or closed meeting is required to be recorded, it must be unedited and contain all the portions of the meeting. Recordings of open meetings must be made available within 3 days. Every entity needs to establish procedures for the governing body's approval of minutes. Pending minutes are written minutes prepared in draft form and are subject to change before being approved by the governing body. Pending minutes must contain a clear indication, such as a draft or pending watermark, that the governing body hasn't yet approved the minutes and that they're subject to change. Pending minutes must be made available within 30 days. Approved minutes are written minutes of the meeting that have been approved by the governing body. Approved minutes are the official record of the meeting and must be made available within 3 business days. Whoever is responsible for taking the minutes during meetings, typically the records officer, recorder, or clerk, needs to be familiar with what document requires be contained in the minutes. When a governing body closes a meeting, the following must be publicly announced and entered into the minutes of the open meeting at which the closed meeting was approved. The reason or reasons for holding the closed meeting, the location where the closed meeting will be held, and the vote of each member of the governing body, either for or against the motion to close the meeting. The recording and any minutes must include the date, time, and location of the meeting, the names of the governing body members present and absent, and the names of all others present except where disclosure would infringe on the confidentiality necessary to fulfill the original purpose of closing the meeting. For more information, access our local government resource center at resources.auditor.utah.gov.
So I think we're good. Video recordings of these meetings and the town council meetings don't typically get up within 3 days.
So,
Are we?
now,
missing something?
The recordings are available right after the
That's
meeting,
right.
because they directly go to our YouTube, like
And
they are
that's-
automatically there.
they're there.
Oh, they're just not on the town.
Yeah, it takes us a few days to get them on the website,
Oh,
but they're
okay,
available
okay.
directly on our YouTube, which is linked on our
And
website,
that's
so they are there.
acceptable?
That's acceptable, that's right. And also, remember that the written minutes are not verbatim.
Sure.
And a lot of people are saying, no, I don't want to watch the recording. I want to see the minutes.
Yeah.
And I have to tell them, no, if you really want to know what happened, listen to the recording and you can hear all the discussion, what the motion was, because the minutes are just going to be minutes. They're not going to be a verbatim
Right,
transcript.
yeah, and sometimes in the past, we've done a better job lately, but we used to have some pretty thorough minutes that were close to verbatim.
Yeah, and that's
That
not,
blew my mind. I'm like,
yeah.
how do you decide so-and-so said such and such? But surely you missed so-and-so saying such and such.
Sure,
I mean,
yeah.
That's too much.
Yeah, it is too much, and it also can, mistakes can be made because when you're trying to put that all together, the placement of some of them, I hate to say this, but, the meaning of, it depends on what the meaning of the word is, right?
Absolutely.
As
Nuance
someone
is
once
lost
said.
when it's in print. Absolutely.
As someone famous once said, well, that
Yeah.
could make a lot of difference in, if someone's trying to do them verbatim, but just quickly versus the recording. So really the important things are, what were the basic concepts or topics that someone brought up
Right.
when they came up during the public hearing? What were some of the questions that you had? What was the motion?
And for the most part, I mean, and I think this is probably well understood, but public comments don't need to show up in minutes.
If it occurred, if you guys have it as an agenda item and people spoke, they should be included in your minutes.
What they said?
What they said, that's right.
Oh, okay.
If you have it, now remember, you do not have to have public comment on, as an agenda item. But if you do,
I mean, like a public hearing, for example.
Yeah.
People are commenting. I mean,
Right.
We have to, Bill has to keep track of everything everybody's.
no, you don't have to sit there, you don't have to put in there like Joe Smith got
That's what
up
I
and
mean.
said this. No, you could say, the comments of the public, they said they don't want a school across the street from them, they don't like the animals there, whatever, maybe you
So
can
over-
summarize
Yeah.
those comments, that's right. Because again, the recording is going to have them identified by name, they're gonna have the actual comments. That's right.
I'm just fearful of getting the less is more in minutes, because if you go too far down the road, you're bound to misrepresent somebody.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then they come in and they say, that's not what I said, and I've had that happen over the years
Yeah.
too, and I've said, look, listen to what
Yeah.
what you said, that is.
So
what
and
you
so spoke
said.
had this yay or nay, and then go back to the recording if you want to hear how yay or nay they were about it, yeah.
That's
I like
right.
that.
So, I've used up a lot of your time, so I don't think I'm gonna do the end of that, but here's what, there are a couple other things I would say. Just remember, we touched on a little bit, and that was grandma. I mean, the conversations the written conversations that you have, any record that's created is going to be a public record. Obviously, their grandma allows us to classify certain things as protected, for example, or private, and that has to do with people's medical records and their social security numbers and some other things like that. There's a kind of a catch-all for something that might also be, extremely private type of situation that you wouldn't want to get out there, but those are very tricky. And just know that our records committee of the state has been very liberal at just saying, no, give it out.
Yeah.
And so really that's where I would err on the side of it, just give it out, right? I mean, let people know, protect people's private or protected information, but otherwise get that out. And I really think that's probably it that I have. If you have any questions.
It's been really helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I will say this, can I just say, I love Apple Valley. When I pulled in today, I was sad when I pulled in, because there are just great people here. I look at you all, and I'm surprised that Janet's still on the planning commission, because she must have the thickest skin ever, because you gave me your. There must be something that you're doing, because I've been in some very difficult meetings and people get very upset, right?
Yes.
And have you learned that you can't make everybody happy?
Yes.
You can't make everybody happy, but if it wasn't for
But we
people,
try.
but yeah, and if it wasn't for people like you, people like all of you that are willing to just serve, then what would the community be like? And that's what I love. I made some great friends out here, and just know that I consider you all friends. If you ever need anything, you can call me.
But thank you. It's been, I'm sad to see you move on. I totally get you, I wondered for your whole tenure why in the world you would make this drive so often.
Have you seen the
I'm
beautiful
grateful that you
mountains
have,
out
but we're gonna be sad.
Well, the only thing that surpasses the beauty of the mountains here are the people.
So you can buy a lot here, yeah, Sean?
I would love to buy a lot here.
Better
but-
hurry up.
I know, I was gonna say, but I don't want to come in for a social.
Even an attorney won't be able to. Hey, we're an easy group.
I'm afraid to go come in for a zone change.
Another house.
Well, honestly, it's things like this, that one of the things that I think a town of any, particularly a town that's relatively new, there's some growing pains you have to go through. Dale and I've had discussions about just the general, how does a town go from little to something bigger than little? And one of the learning processes that I think residents have to go through is to understand that if you were here before it was a town, you had a say because, I mean, everybody has a say, but you could literally control things with your words. And now you can come and say your piece, but it's a government body. Yeah, and that's just because there are rules we have to follow. And I think hearing, having something like this on video, I hope residents will take the time to go watch these things and learn and bring themselves up to speed on what can and what can't we do. The very fact that a public hearing is a chance for you to speak, but not necessarily for us to have a long conversation is, I think, a learning experience.
It is a learning experience.
And I've been on the other side of it. I've been in the town council meetings where I've come up and had things to say. And yeah, it's not all that thrilling to say your piece and then sit back down and realize that you're just a voice. I get it, but that's the process we're going through as a town. You don't get to just boss people around anymore like we used to. You get to decide whoever's the loudest voice gets to be the
I
tail
don't
that wags the
remember
dog.
anybody bossing anybody around even before we.
Well, I don't mean that in a prejudicial way, just that, people, loud voices used to,
30 years.
yeah.
Well, I guess I better go lot shopping and.
Yeah, you better do it before you
Hey,
can't afford it.
3 houses have been sold on my street.
My gosh, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I make a motion to adjourn.
A second.
All those in favor of the motion, any discussion about the motion to adjourn? Does anybody have any negative comments? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Let's get out of here. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Sean.
We're gonna miss you, Sean.